our Fashion
New
Week.
York Fashion Week. New York Fashion Week. Ben, are you going to any shows?
Shows. I may go to Kalina Strada and I may go to Jane Wade, depending on if our friends over at Plus Plus can make space for me, and of course the designers can make space for me. Um,
Ben, there's always
other
space for
than
you.
other than that, it's been activations. I went to the Vans Max Fish thing on Wednesday night.
Yeah, tell me about
Drop
that. I saw some photos from on Atiba Jefferson's feed. What was that all about?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, it was like the class of 2004 Max Fish reunion, which was cool. It essentially was like Vans under our friend Drika Lincoln's leadership has really been focused on plugging into authentic culture in all of the places that they go to.
Absolutely.
And they said, New York skate culture, Max Fish was central to it for many years and still lives in the popular imagination. So they sort of recreated the facade of Max Fish in a pop up space in Soho, and then they had TV on the radio play a
Oh,
surprise
I saw
set.
that too. That was super.
Yeah, which is cool. It was kind of amazing. I have weirdly after all of these years, I'd never seen TV on the radio before, and so it was fun to check that off my bucket list. And they looked great, sounded great, and it was really fun. But then beyond, I mean, more so than that, it was just like the room. It's just you get to see everybody and um, hanging out. By the way, our erstwhile colleague Gian was there with his wife Janice and gang right in the front row for TV on the radio. So
Really, really? I
got a
mean,
chance.
that's definitely
Yeah, got a
Gene.
chance to see. Got a chance to say hello and talk to Gian a little bit, which was nice because he's a very busy man this week. He was. It was. I asked him how many things it was, and he was like, "This is the fifth tonight, but it's my
Jeez.
last one."
But he loves it.
Because Oh no, no. I mean, as would I in those shoes. But he was going to get up early and get on the bus or the jitney, I think, as they call it, and go out to the Ralph Lauren show. Um, which it's funny because it reminds me, it's like 1 year ago, you and I were en route to Goodwood,
Right.
which I think is happening probably. I don't know. Actually, I haven't checked the dates, but it's happening this weekend. I had a beer with Charlie March not too long ago,
Oh,
and
super.
yeah, it was cool.
Nice. How's Charlie doing?
He's doing well. He's doing well. I mean, they had a really busy summer. Festival of Speed went really well. Good Woof, which is the dog show, is apparently the smallest thing they do, but the cutest. And other than that, he's doing great.
It's amazing. Good to hear from that family. Of course, that was a great trip we were on. The
Yeah,
Ralph
yeah.
show is in so it is on. It's in the Hamptons, I'm assuming, or it's on the
It
island.
was, yeah. It was yesterday, and it was
Okay.
Thursday, the 4th of September or the 5th of September. Yeah, Ralph apparently bought a horse farm um, a few years back, and so they staged it at the horse farm, and they put up a big tent, and they had everybody walking, and it seemed very Ralph. And then our friends and compatriots, Gian and Mordecai, and the usual suspects were all there. So it looked cool. It looked cool.
Amazing. Did you feel like they got the press response, or rather the social response that they wanted from it? Because it's interesting. Like for me, I have not been on Instagram the last couple of days, do some just work in general, and it's
Hmm.
so interesting how much happens in a
Oh
given
yeah.
day if you turn off for a little bit, right?
Yep.
I guess that
Yep.
is what FOMO is.
Well, if you want that to be your FOMO, it can be. I mean, I don't know. The reaction was the specific quote that I read from someplace, and I can't think of from where, it was like it was very Ralph, um,
But isn't that
which
to say that,
makes sense.
yeah, which is to say that has he just carved his own category? You know what I mean? Like he has just carved his own lane. We know he's done that, but does it become part of the vernacular now?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's all a part of the. I mean, it's Ralph world, right? Like
Right.
he's a world builder, or that company is a world builder par excellence. And having worked with him a year ago, we know why, right? Like
Right.
the obsessive level of attention to detail that they pay is, I mean, in my mind, it's even a little counterproductive because you can get stuck, but when it works incredibly well. And
Right.
and the thing that I love about it more so than anything else is just that there's this radical mix involved. It's like it's it's tweed and nylon, it's camouflage and rep stripes. You know what I mean? It's just like shit that doesn't make sense together, put together in a way that makes sense.
That's such a it is interesting how those juxtapositions tend to work in that sense, which is cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, fashion week is it's still rolling through, right? It doesn't end until
It's
the
just
end of
starting. It's just
yeah,
starting.
just
It's yeah. So I went to the Vans thing on Wednesday night. I went to drop by the Echo, the new Echo store in Soho last night
this
to
is Echo the
see.
shoes or Echo the brand? Or I guess they're both
This is
brands.
Echo, the ECCO, the
Yep.
Danish shoe and leather goods brand, or
Yep.
leather brand. Really, the thing that's interesting about Echo is that like people know them for the shoes. They're sort of like the Clarks of Denmark, if you will, like
Yeah,
high
for sure.
street, many styles. Not like a few things that are pretty directional, but generally speaking, like not terribly cool. And they have new management coming in. Shout out to Ezra Martin, who is our buddy from Nike and Converse and YouTube and Timberland, who's now over there as the CMO. But they did a partnership with a Berlin-based artist last night who um, took one of their more interesting sort of fashion directed models and dipped them in a kind of a, it's almost like a super vulcanization process.
Oh, cool.
So they're kind of they it's Margiela-esque, but it's done by a fine artist, not uh, a fashion show. But yeah, so anyway, stopped by there and saw him, and then tonight I'm gonna go by Standard and Strange because there's a indigo dipping workshop,
That's
indigo
right up
fat
your end.
workshop.
That's right up your alley.
Yeah, and then there's a shop around the corner from me called Million Goods that's doing the launch of something, um, from a brand called Napoli d'Italia or something like that. I
Hmm.
don't know. I got to look at this thing, but in any case, so yeah, it's Fashion Week comes to Greenpoint, which is this is a new development.
I mean, that
25
should be a
years I've been
t-shirt.
waiting.
That should be a
I've been
t-shirt.
waiting. Yeah, I mean, not like notwithstanding like the Peter Doe show or whatever. It's now happening here at a regular consumer level.
Right. That's amazing. One thing I want to ask you is for those that don't know, plenty of people do know, Ben does an annual Indigo dip, and I was just curious, when will you be doing your annual Indigo dip?
Oh, I did it. I did it.
Ay, Jesus. Doesn't
Yeah,
even
I
make the
did it.
newsletter.
Well, yeah, I'll show you one of the. So those who are viewing along will get to see this in just a second when I find the photos, and those who are um, listening along, you'll just have to believe me. But basically, I one of the things that I helped to coordinate this year was a very limited run of sweatsuits um, designed in collaboration with Throwing Fits
Right.
and Mountain Dew Baja Blast,
Right.
codename Blasting Fits. And so I got one of the production extras, which starts off, let's say, that color,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Of it is a Baja Blast green, and I was told by my wife and my children that it is not my color, and so I said, well, let me indigo dip this guy,
There we go.
and
Solves
so
everything.
yeah, we did the indigo dip, and you'll see this is the video of the sweatshirt going into the dip, but it came out. It's a kind of a wild blue. Anyway, you know
Ben,
what
where
an
are you
indigo dip
getting the
looks like.
indigo itself? Like, is this something I can buy on
From
Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon. It's there's a company called Jacquard that does a pre oxidized indigo mix, and you basically you get that, and you get a couple of like an iron sulfate and a calcium hydroxide. You mix up the vat, throw it in there, and then dip
Ben,
and test
please
and
do me a
learn.
favor. Please add the recipe somewhere so that I can do it. Because like this is a perfect project for this week, and I'm in the middle of cleaning out, as we call summer clothes here.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm ready to do some dipping, especially socks. I feel like you can bring back socks with a good indigo dip,
You
right?
definitely can. I mean, you can bring back lots of stuff with the indigo dip. The thing that to remember is that all of the stitching thread in everything that we own is synthetic, and so
Right.
it doesn't die. So you end up with contrast stitching basically on everything, which is a cool effect in certain
It's a
respects. But
byproduct of it, anyways, right?
yeah, exactly. All right,
Super cool.
I'll post my favorite recipe.
All right, let's get into the news. A lot of stuff happening this week. I want to start with a couple things that I saw and I posted on LinkedIn,
Okay.
which are important because I also have some updates. As some may know, I was in Chicago this weekend with a friend of mine from Flamingo Capital down here, a guy named Chris Adamo. Again, a man about town, Ben.
Yeah.
You'd see him, you'd love him as well. And he kindly invited me to check out Pearl Jam. And I want to talk about fandom for a quick second because for those that are not familiar, most bands have fan clubs,
Yeah.
but others treat fan clubs with more precision than others, especially
More.
based on how long you've been a member. And
Yeah. More precision is a good. I like that term.
so
Good way to describe it.
if you're a lifelong Pearl Jam fan club member like Chris Adamo is, you have a fan club number, and the lower your number is dictates how much closer you can get to the stage. So
Oh, interesting.
regardless,
Okay.
it was, and you got to give it to them. We saw a show at Wrigley Field. By the way, the fan club is called the 10 Club, and they brand it, man. They brand the doorways for the 10 Club, like it's very clear who's allowed, who's not, and I got to give them credit. But more importantly than that, and it's something I plan on doing a little bit of writing on, have my rock stars traded in their docs for Hokas. And
I
I
saw
will
that.
show you visual evidence because Eddie Vedder, lead singer of Pearl Jam,
Yeah.
Mike McCready, and by
Yeah.
the way, who's a fantastic guitarist. I have to just put that out there. And I think like Stone Gossard, like one of their other members, all were wearing Hoka, which to me was like, okay, fine. These guys want to be comfortable. But what happened to my man wearing his docs, climbing the stage piping, with that said, Chris did send me a photo from Pearl Jam's 50th performance in MSG, and he
Okay.
was back. He was back in his boots, by the way. So maybe it
Okay.
was maybe it was just
Just
a
for
soft
Chicago.
night.
Yeah,
Maybe it was
the windy city requires the pillowed soles.
yeah.
It's funny. Chris Black and Jason happened to talk about aging rockers in like Joey Ramone down to the ankles and then Hokas
No
on
shit.
the train in New York. So you're definitely not the only person to observe this, and I don't know what to say about it except that we're all getting old. It was funny being at Max Fish the other day. It's just like this is a room full of 45 and 50-year-olds, signifying about our influence on the culture, and then a group of young kids there who are just like, are the ones actually doing shit. It's funny actually. There's a young woman walking around taking photos with a like a disposable camera,
Yeah.
and I knew that Matt Projects had produced the event, and I was just like, oh, are you just like around shooting for Matt Projects? And she's like, well, yeah, they asked me to just get a disposable camera. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, what do you do at Matt Projects? She's like, oh no, I'm here with Vans. And I was like, oh cool, what do you do at Vans? She's like, I'm on the pro team. It's just it's just like some probably I mean must be incredibly sick female skater that I had never, whose name I'd never seen, whose face I'd never seen before, and I was just like, oh man,
I
here
mean
we
that, but
go.
that's the great thing.
These are the people that are actually doing it, and
That's
meanwhile
true.
I'm sitting around drinking Budweisers.
I think Vans. I think Vans just don't have. I mean, I am
Well,
not a guy to knock Vans ever because I just feel like
well, we
regardless of
talked
them,
about you coming to New York and bringing a pair of old schools as like your only pair of sneakers.
that's right. That's right. And it's I don't know. I think sometimes there's a reason why. And I was just listening to your friend Casey's latest podcast. And by the way, it's fantastic. It's something that I'm going to turn on a lot more people to because her coverage of what's happening with female Gen Z, I think, is super interesting.
Yep,
Um, and oh shit, where was I going with that? Well, just in
Vans,
general, hmm?
Vans.
It just in general, regardless of where a trend comes and goes, um, or sort of whatever action happens, we tend to want to have a conversation about it all the time. And I mean, in many regards, that's exactly why we're here on the air to have these conversations.
Yep.
Um, but for Vans, it's they seem to be doing things okay. Like nothing feels heavy-handed. I
Yep.
didn't even realize the shit was happening until I looked on Instagram because I wasn't in the city, which is even cooler, right?
Right.
So the fact that you can have I'm obsessed with the idea that you can have insular events in New York, you can have insular events elsewhere, but more importantly, this I don't think this brand's gone away. It's maybe not selling necessarily what it used to, but it's coming back. There's just no doubt about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think that was that's definitely the feeling, and it's a feeling that's I've heard from people in the trade as well, like outside of Vans the company. The um the thing that has been interesting is the the speed and the signals. Like Emrata showing up in bikini photos in red old schools a couple of months ago is like there's a signal there. Bella Hadid has been wearing them recently, and these are, as far as I understand, like not puts from the brand. These are choices that these young, very influential women are making.
Right.
Um,
But they are
but
signals.
it's
I
also
mean, what she wears matters, right?
yeah,
Regardless
yeah, oh, 100%.
of what she thinks.
100%. I think they're just, look, they're these things swing in pendulums and they are on the swing back. They've got a long way to go before they're anywhere near the positive territory of, a few years ago before they started really pushing the expansion. But yeah, in any case, I think I think what Drika and the crew are doing is cool, and we had fun the other night. So, and I'm
Love it. Shout out to
looking
that
forward to
team.
it.
I think.
They got a couple of pairs of there's a SMU at Pilgrim
Oh no,
that
wait, for
got
Vans?
yeah, it was there's a slip
OTW?
on. Yeah, it's OTW. There's a slip on. There's a old school, and there's a chukka in a kind of a dark charcoal tonal gray. That's pretty tight, and I think be going after that.
Love it, man. Love it. Let's keep going. Especially like just
Oh, you know what? The other place. Sorry, the other place that I saw Vans today. I saw they have these really nice like suede authentics in J Crew, which allows us to jump to the J Crew thing for a second.
for sure.
I
I'm
went,
a
I
fan of this
literally, I
store.
rode my bike over to the store in Williamsburg and grabbed the catalog. I grabbed this issue because this is my buddy's daughter on the cover. Um,
On that
and
note,
so,
gonna text Brendan Babenzian right now, see if he can send me one.
um,
But let's talk about this. The catalog world, as you know,
yeah,
both of us are paper obsessed. We
yep,
love getting mail.
that is true.
Nothing beat the catalog. I remember the first catalog that I remember myself getting was, and I don't know if you remember Service Merchandise. They were like like a,
Of course, of course.
I don't even know how to
Service
describe them.
merchandise looms large in my life because not only do I remember the catalogs growing up, but also there were some banks, uh, like embankments behind service merchandise in Jamesville that we used to go out and skateboard on. That
No
was
shit.
it was a famous spot. Yeah, so the service banks that was big in my life.
And it was part of our life before the internet. And
Uh
quite
huh.
frankly, I still stand behind it in terms of a reference library that I like to have around myself. Nothing beats having, say, catalogs like this, Banana Republic catalogs, and of course the Abercrombies. But let's talk about J. Crew here. They've really done a solid job of just to the Ralph reference, feeling like J. Crew. It feels very J. Crew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Demi
Yeah.
on the cover, super cool. But having it like a real catalog with real storytelling, I think is super cool. And based on what I'm looking at now, this looks like a complete matte product, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Do you mean in terms of the stock?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's matte. It's very tactile. It's I'll kind of show it up to the screen. There's River
And
there.
by the way, I
And
didn't
then
realize this either. And maybe I've been blind to it by not checking my mailbox, but they discontinued the catalog business in 2017, which is
in
interesting. So
2017, that's right. The thing that strikes me about this that I like is that it used to be very evenly divided between men's and women's. Women's was in the front, men's was in the back. There was not a lot of editorial stuff here. So they've got this interview with Demi Moore, who looks great. By the way,
who I love, by the way.
the
She is
Williamsburg
still my
store
crush, man.
the Williamsburg store didn't have any of the Demi Moore covers. It had the other three covers, but not the Demi Moore one. I went for this one for reasons I've explained, but um,
So Ben,
yeah.
I'm
So
sorry, I didn't catch that part. They did multi-cover on this as well?
there are four covers. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
there are four covers.
And what's the wrap up on this? I'm looking at here. It
What
says,
do you mean?
well, in terms of what they're making, I'm looking through this look here. It looks like J. Crew's hitting 3 billion in business. I'd love to know what they were just 2 years ago, and that should be
Yeah,
pretty easy.
it would be interesting to know. The other thing to note is that the Brendan and the men's side has been doing catalogs, zine like catalogs for the last 3 or 4 seasons. I've got a couple of them downstairs because my buddy Sean Joswick made a couple of appearances in them, and I, just
I get
collecting
it.
Joswick shit. But yeah, so it's cool to see Brendan's influence on the whole brand, right? I'm sure everybody was behind this decision, but sure, I think they've proved the path for it.
It's very hard to again, I could be completely wrong. What am I saying? It's very hard. I don't even know if it's true, but it would feel very difficult to want to touch anything that's happening right now in order to not like if I was inside, I would just let this thing run the way it's going because it
Yeah,
feels right. Does it
yeah.
it looks like the numbers are working. You're at 3 billion. I haven't checked to see what they were at last year, but that's a significant change. And let's be honest, I think there is a coolness to J. Crew again. And certainly if you
Yep.
go to the stores in places like where I am, you can feel it. It's super
Well,
nice to see that again.
the interesting thing I was struck by so just very quick visit over to the Williamsburg store, which is not the most directional by any means, but the thing that I was struck about it was that when Brennan took over his first stuff in the men's collection when it started to come out, that store felt, or the men's side of it felt exuberant. And I was
It
struck by
felt like what
how
the liquor store used to feel like.
it felt like what the liquor store felt like. It felt like Noah. And what I was struck by when I was there just this morning was that it feels much less expressive. And I wonder to what extent the early collections were able to buy people's back into favor with, like, the cool guys, right? The beams collections and those sorts of things. And you buy the cool guys back in, and now it's like, okay, now we can start to become more of the uniform dressing kind of thing that I think they have sacrificed to, you know, the Uniqlos of the world or somebody like that, where you can really do volume on stuff that's not super special but is well made on silhouette, on trend, all of that kind
Right.
of stuff.
I want to talk about, if we can, Banana Republic for a quick second here, which is
We can definitely talk about it.
which feels like which is a brand that's gone under it's come up and down. We have friends that have worked on bringing back that business. What do you think in your mind? Why do you think that Banana Republic doesn't necessarily hit the same way that a J. Crew does? And if I can add to that, would you say that do you feel like J. Crew, when you think about it today, in terms of sort of the public aura of it, is it more of a men's or women's brand? Or are we really right down the middle?
I mean, second question first. It's hard to answer that. I mean, I would imagine the volume is still in women's, right? As is the case with most of these brands. The trend has probably been in men's over the last couple of seasons,
Yeah,
and so maybe you see like greater gains on that side. But I would say it's a women's brand,
right.
um, at for by volume. Um, it's funny, right? Like these companies, when you really get into them, you can make a lot of you can make a lot of noise about what the role of a particular style might be, or a particular merchandising strategy, or a price point, or whatever it is. But really, like, all of these things get determined by individuals, right? And Banana Republic hasn't had the right individuals in place to do what they needed to do. And that's, our friend Anna was there as the chief brand officer for a while, and they did some interesting stuff under her, but clearly, like, the rest of the machine wasn't backing her. And that could be
Right.
because Gap is a privately held. It's the Fisher family. It's a privately held thing, and at a certain point it's too hard to move the mechanism, right? Like, again, revisiting the Ralph thing that we talked about earlier, like, it's so hard to get them to do something that they're not accustomed to doing, because the thing they do that they're accustomed to doing, they're so good at. You know, I think Gap Inc. has been has over the last few years hasn't been as good at that, and they've been
Yeah.
flailing a little bit.
They got Rich. They got
Maybe
Rich
they change it.
Dickinson. They got Rich Dickinson's up there, who's coming out of Mattel.
Right.
He's brought back what I think is some of the best. We actually talked about this in one of my trend forecasting class. The
Oh yeah.
crate of the '90s, of course, and the Gap was about loose, relaxed, baggy, and khaki for the most part. And they've really rehashed some of the better '90s dance ads showing youth in the garments and in motion.
Yeah.
I think that ads work super well, and I'm curious to see if they can keep that momentum because, like J. Crew, it's it feels like Gap. Maybe
Yeah.
because it feels like Gap from the 90s. And one last
Well,
point I want to make, Ben, just really
go ahead.
quickly before we jump. If you read the the Wall Street Journal piece on J. Crew bringing back catalogs, I find it really interesting that they, we still reference back to what was before. So you still see the references back to Jenna, of course, Jenna Lyons, who
Hmm.
was former creative director. But what's interesting is that if I'm reading, and I'm quoting here from the Times, um, Jake, they say here, quote, J. Crew spent the tail end of the 2010s playing catch up to fashion and dealing with the blowback of high pricing and styling that were more focused on trends under the reigns of Jenna Lyons. And I don't know if that's a backhanded slap on maybe what she did, but because we can, I think across the board people believe it was
Yeah.
success under her reign. But now are we finally seeing something that may be superseding that?
Yeah. I
When do
mean,
we stop
maybe
talking
like,
about Jenna? And I don't mean that in a rude way, by the way.
no, well, I mean, look, I think women love Olympia. I don't know her. I don't know anything about her. Dudes love Brennan. We do know Brennan, and we do know something about that. Um, so yeah, to me, it's you want stuff that is considered well-made classic. Will never will not go out of style anytime soon. That kind of stuff. So yeah,
Right.
it totally makes sense. Well, so before we go though, the other thing that I want to talk about was that aside from it being Fashion Week, it is also Armory Week. So
Oh,
it's
super.
it's the art Super Bowl, or the art market Super Bowl here in New
Shit, I
York
feel
as
like I
well.
should come up.
Yeah, well, it basically means that like driving in Manhattan is a total fool's errand. So it's bicycle transportation everywhere now.
Right.
But the thing I wanted to bring up was twofold. Run is this fashion art crossover with Prada doing an AI enabled, as they call it, like self help or therapy line with Miranda July, the author of All Fours, the big summer hit book, and then movie director and this sort of stuff, performance artist. Um, which is a very sort of interesting thing. It is written in the press, particularly in this Wall Street Journal story, as it being a self help, or like a almost like you call it for therapy, and she offers you therapeutic points. And Emily Sundberg wrote about it and recorded her call and put it in her newsletter this morning. And Miranda July tells her to eat blueberries to make her feel better.
Right. Right. This is. Go ahead.
I called, and Miranda July thanked me for my music and said from the first time she had ever seen me, she knew she was in love with me, and then backed out of it, like, because I wasn't being expressive enough.
So
The
I mean,
AI, the
I'm
AI,
gonna call this number. It's an
you
800
should.
number in the U.S., I assume.
Yeah, it's a toll-free number in the US, and you call and you have my interaction was about 2 minutes in total, including the disclaimer at the front from Prada.
Oh, there
Um,
is a disclaimer on it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like this is the Miranda July hotline presented by Prada. It is powered by AI. Um, Yada yada yada. Disclaimer,
Yeah, yeah,
disclaimer,
yeah,
disclaimer,
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing. And
Listen, these
then
things.
it's a series of responses from Miranda that are theoretically generated according to your
Voice.
the verbal signals that you send
Right,
it.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So that was that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say we've been reading about AI hallucinations for about a year now. The crew over at oh my god, I'm forgetting his name. Right over at Platformer, and I think Kevin Roos
Casey.
over
Yeah,
at
Casey Newton.
Casey Newton, right? And Kevin Roos over at New York Times,
Yeah.
went really into this. I think I think the AI, which was this is very early on in Microsoft's AI. I think her name was Sydney, and she basically asked, I think Kevin
Kevin.
to
Yeah.
break up with his wife, if I'm not mistaken,
That's
or
right.
something like this,
That's
right?
right. Well,
So
the
go
AI
ahead.
was in love with Kevin. He's a very beguiling figure, from what we understand. He's like he's the Ezra
What?
Klein of tech
Oh,
podcast.
he is.
Um, but so that the product the Miranda July thing was one thing with art, and then the other thing that I wanted to point out was that the platformart.com, which is the um e-commerce limited edition art edition product wing of David Zwirner, the Mega Gallery.
Hmm.
Um, just released a bag with a favorite painter of mine, Cynthia Talmadge, called the Aspiring Actress Bag, and it amalgamates a series of paintings that she did into this MZ Wallace soft tote, or like day bag kind of thing.
Oh my God, I need
Um,
the crumb bag or the crumb yoga mat. Are you kidding
yeah,
me?
yeah. The platform art does some cool stuff, but
What?
in any case, I really liked the idea of this. Cynthia does a good job of creating worlds, imagined worlds, and incredible backstory with her paintings. And she has been a kind of she's a mentor
So cool.
to Anna. Oh, Anna, who's dating Larry Gagosian, and who's the Anna Wyant, sorry, um, who we met at Bobby's talk last year, and so anyway, I just thought I like seeing Cynthia
I
win
um
with that.
I just love this, man. I mean, for me, it's just as a complete spot, just out of sheer luck. I have literally been on a Robert Crumb print and eBay hunt over the last 4 days. I don't know what happened to me, Ben. And
Really
listen, yeah, I mean,
interesting. Why?
you and I collect differently. So I tend to happening with me is I'm starting to worry, and please, I don't want this to sound morbid, but I'm getting worried that my opportunity to pick up pieces by my favorite artists before they pass is getting short. And I think
Interesting.
for me, I firmly believe Robert Crumb's prints are well undervalued for the impact he had. I mean, you can still
Okay.
pick up. By the way, I don't think a lot of people know this, but Robert's wife and has a gallery in the small village in Paris, in France, where they live. And she has a partner. And by the way, that gallery is actually on Etsy. So you can go on Etsy and pick up a ton of
Huh.
her work, as
No shit.
well as a
How
lot of
about that?
one-off Robert Crumb pieces. I'll send you a link to it later.
Yeah, do that.
Um, but on that point, I very much love this. I mean, this is where, looking at platform, you got to give them credit for doing stuff correct and beautifully. And
Yeah.
certainly these bags look cool. It's I want more of this. I want more of this. I want more people thinking outside the box. Can we take a yoga mat and have Ben Roy's work on it? And
Right.
I'm thank you so much for turning me on to this. I don't think
Yeah, of course. Well,
I
it's
feel
just
like I've
look
seen this.
as always, is the things that excite us, right? Is like the objects imbued with more
Right,
meaning than just their functionality,
right,
right? So that's
right.
what we want.
Let's do one more story. I think we're about over here, aren't we? Let me see.
We are,
We're
yeah,
two
we are.
minutes over, but I want to talk about one last thing before we go really quick. And it's the Pizza Hut. I want to talk about Pizza Hut, and I want to talk about Walmart Marketplace turning on
So you want to?
StockX.
Okay, all right.
I just want to talk on the last one. StockX entering Walmart Marketplace is super interesting to me because it's going to allow for bidding on a platform that's essentially trying to take on Amazon. And that's
Hmm.
quite a different way of shopping than you would say in a traditional place like Walmart Marketplace. So this product, they're basically putting a full catalog online, or at least a select catalog online. And it's going to be interesting. Like, are Walmart shoppers going to buy sneakers? That's really what I want to see.
Yeah, you want to see whether the theory is proven out. I mean, the thing is, rare Nikes, certainly Nikes, and probably other things too, Yeezys and other high heat stuff, has been available through Walmart.com for a long time as part of their affiliate sales program.
Yeah.
And so it was not uncommon to occasionally you get sent the link of like a $15,000 pair of Dunks on Walmart, and
Right.
people being like, what the hell is going on? The way that this legitimizes that whole universe through StockX
Hmm.
and its verification process is, I mean, it's probably a net benefit to everybody, but it feels like it's, you know, emblematic of a trend that was happening organically, as opposed to like radically inventive business thinking.
Right. Right. And the Pizza Hut, Ben, this one's yours. Am I
This
understanding
is
correctly?
radically inventive business thinking, like
Go.
paying for your pizza with the TikTok. I like that a lot.
But sorry, does that mean that I am essentially making a TikTok, putting a hashtag in it, and they're giving me a free pizza?
That probably oversimplifies it a little bit, but I think that's the thrust. Yeah, exactly.
Is there not some strange FTC regulation around free advertising and pizza? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I, Listen, man, I think that as long as we can prove that Pizza Hut is owned by a U.S. corporation and is not a secret arm of the Russian
What?
counterintelligence team.
Whoa,
Did
is
you
that
see
where you're
that?
going with this?
No, no, not really. It's but it's just it's funny. It's like the Tim Pool, the sort of right wing troll slash professed skateboarder slash former colleague of mine, got indicted today for taking $100,000 in clandestine funds from Russia um, as a means to influence. And it's anyway, it's
We're
like
out of time, but
it
let's pick
beggars
that up next
belief.
week. I want to pick that
Okay.
up next week because
Yeah, we'll have to get more. We'll get more details on it next week.
I heard an insane podcast about this very thing where a group of people in some city were targeted by Facebook ads to promote, I don't know if it was pro Hillary at the time or pro Trump at the time. And they basically determined that all, those fronts came through, clandestine places. And when you ask the people that took part in the march, they had no idea who, they just were there because they believed in it. They had no idea who was in charge, and sometimes there aren't. We've
Yeah,
wasted 36 minutes today. That's a very long
we haven't
episode.
wasted any time, Jeff.
We've
This has been
apologized. No, we haven't wasted any time. We apologize, but thank you for spending your Friday morning with us and listening to Culture Club half hour. Do us a favor, follow us on Spotify. We're actually getting some traction there, which is dope. You can watch us on YouTube as well, and spread the word. Ben, I hope you have a fantastic are we in fall yet? No, we're still in summer, right?
still summer till the
Yeah.
21st.
Enjoy your final 3 weeks of summer, Ben.
Exactly. Well, we'll talk again next week about our second to last week of summer. So we'll go
All
from
right,
there.
Ben. See you
All
next
right, dude.
week.
Easy. Bye, everybody.